Soldering jump rings closed is a basic skill in jewelry manufacturing and repair. Here we discuss gold and sterling silver jump rings. If you need to solder brass or other base metal rings, low-temperature solders and soldering techniques would be used. There are two methods available to deposit solder into the joint: applying paste solder or placing a snippet of solder in the joint using a solder pick. The smaller the jump ring, the more difficult depositing the solder on the joint becomes, as we do not want the solder to flow anywhere outside of the joint. Note that very little solder is needed to close a jump ring. This guide covers the typical task of adding a jump ring and a clasp to a chain tab. The tools needed are 2 flat nose or needle nose pliers, jump rings, fire coat, flux, solder or solder paste, a solder pad, a soldering torch, a soldering pick, interlocking tweezers, a pickling solution, eye protection, and optionally, polishing tools. The first step will be to assemble the pieces together. Using your pliers, gently twist the jump ring open sideways, just enough to allow it to slip onto the tab and the clasp. After installing the parts needed, twist the jump ring back together so the seam is totally closed. Due to gold and silver having memory, or the desire to maintain a position, you will probably need to overclose the joint, slightly past where the joint is aligned, and allow the metal to spring back a bit for a perfect join. There should be a slight tension holding the seam closed. Soldering is not made to bridge gaps. Next, fire coat the piece wherever it will be heated. To learn more about this process, check out this article, Soldering 101. Fire coating will prevent heat damage to affected parts of the chain and clasp. In this case, we'll fire coat the jump ring and about 1 inch of the chain with the tab and clasp. After the fire coat is covering the parts that will be exposed to heat, apply the flux, only to the area where you want the solder to flow. No flux is needed if you're using soldering paste, because it is already mixed into the compound. The next step will be to apply your solder to the joint. We will cover the 2 most common options, and whichever type of solder you use, remember, the joint must be as isolated as possible from the rest of the piece. This is to make sure the torch doesn't melt or discolor unwanted parts of the chain. Either rest the chain on your solder pad with the joint on top, or use interlocking tweezers to hold it in position to apply your torch flame. If you choose to use the solder pick technique, the first step will be to heat the piece of solder on your solder pad until it balls up. Pick it up on the end of your solder pick, and then place it directly on the seam of your jump ring as you're heating it. Heat the jump ring until the solder flows evenly through the seam. The heat from your flame will draw the solder to where you want it. Solder flows towards the hottest point. If you use paste solder, apply the paste solder directly to the joint and gently heat until the solder flows into the seam. The next step will be to pickle the work and then rinse it in water. Lastly, you may choose to polish the newly soldered portion of the jump ring. Usually very little polishing is needed. A hard rubber wheel is usually sufficient to brighten up the small amount of solder used. You can now enjoy wearing your jewelry with pride, knowing that you made it yourself. For more jewelry making guides, visit Esslinger.com's Learning Center today.